Hey Pathfinders, our book has finally arrived. The Pathfinder's Journey is live on Amazon right now and ready for you. If you have already purchased our book and or left us a review, we thank you endlessly. If you haven't, what are you waiting for? The ebook sale of 99 cents won't last long, so head over to Amazon today to get your copy. Be sure to download the free 7-day reading journal to make your journey even more worthwhile. Well, that's all for now. Check out the link in the show notes to get your copy of The Pathfinder's Journey today. Enjoy the show. We talked about so much this season. Why your why matters so much, how not knowing your why can ruin your life, relationship with money, managing your money, the rat race, your vision, dreaming big, having a vision for your life, overcoming fear, working with your spouse, and getting your spouse on board. Welcome to the On Purpose Investor Podcast with your host, Eric and Tiffany Vogel. We spent several hard years building a rental property portfolio so we could have more time with our family and live our ideal life. Finding your path can be difficult, so we're here to help guide you along the way with lessons, tips, and tricks to design and implement your dream life through real estate investing. Now sit back, turn up the volume, and get ready for this episode of the On Purpose Investor. Hey Pathfinders, welcome back to the On Purpose Investor Podcast with your host Eric, and Tiffany is not on this episode with me today. Today we're going to be doing a recap. We're going to be looking back over season 1. Let's just take a glimpse back. We talked about so much this season. Why your why matters so much, how not knowing your why can ruin your life, relationship with money, managing your money, the rat race, your vision, dreaming big, having a vision for your life, overcoming fear, working with your spouse, and getting your spouse on board. All of the things that we talked about were so impactful if you can apply them to your life and to your investing career or just in general to your business. We hope that you can use this episode to share with friends and family as a sort of a summary for them to say, hey, the On Purpose Investor Podcast, go listen to episode 12, because it's kind of going to give you a glimpse into what every episode was about. It's a summary. And if you have been an avid listener, and we are so thankful for you, this will just be a refresher for you about all the things we talked about all season long. Episode 1. Let's dive in. We're going to be listening back when Tiffany and I were talking about why your why matters so much. And I give an example about shooting an azimuth in the woods. So I'm in the National Guard, as you'll hear, and how they teach us how to navigate out of the woods and through the woods and to a destination. And why it's so important to shoot an azimuth and be aware of where you're headed along the way. And how does your why relate to that so much? I'm in the Army National Guard, and one thing we do often is land navigation. And in land navigation, they teach you about strategies on how to find different locations. And what you work towards is being able to stand in the middle of the woods or at a starting point or something else and shooting an azimuth. Now, an azimuth is direction in which you are headed in a certain point on the compass. So let's say you're standing in the woods and you need to head towards the northeast. And that's probably going to be around 25 degrees, 35 degrees when you look down on the compass. Now, when you stand in your spot and you shoot this azimuth at 35 degrees, what you're doing is you're holding your compass up to your eye, or you're holding it out in front of you, and you're looking for a point in front of you at 35 degrees. Let's say it's a tree. It wouldn't make a lot of sense to just walk toward that tree and keep going when your target is 500 meters down the way, but the tree is only 10 meters away. So what you do is you go those 10 meters and then you pull up your compass again and you shoot another azimuth as you go. Just like in real life and just like in goal setting, it's very important that you don't just look at your goals and your destination just once and then start heading toward it. The path is so important that you stop, you analyze what you're doing, how you're doing. Is it going the way you want to? Are you getting closer towards your goals? Are you getting further away from them? So I would say it's very important to have an azimuth in your life, know where you're headed, and check it periodically. It's so important.
Yeah, I think people have midlife crises because they have an idea for their life in their 20s, whether they go to college or they're straight out of high school or whatever the situation may be. They have an idea of how they want to live their life, but then you get caught up in paying the bills and a mortgage or paying rent, and you lose focus of what you want out of life. And then you have kids and it becomes even harder because you're in the nitty gritty of blowout poopy diapers 3 times a day, like we have been facing this week. So it's easy to lose track. And I think people wake up in their 50s or so and look around and they're like, holy crap, this is not the life I wanted. And it's just the direction that they set in their 20s wasn't focused enough, and they got off by a degree or two, and they wound up at a completely different place than they wanted to be when they set out in their 20s. And we have tried to be very, very intentional about what do we want out of life? What does our ideal day look like? When you wake up in the morning, whether it's Monday, Friday, Saturday, what does a good day look like for you? And I want to wake up dreading a day just because it's a certain day of the week. I want to enjoy every day of my life. And we, through a lot of hard work and sweat and tears and some blood in some instances, been able to create this life that's very rich for us. And our motivation for this was our why. And it was to be home with our kids and create a life where we could go in an RV trip for 6 months if we want. When we first sat down and started talking about getting into investing, we had a conversation about what makes us happy. We sat down separately and made a list of our top 10 things that made us happy. And we found that a lot of the things on the list were very similar. We enjoy time outside. We love going camping, time together as a family. And we found a lot of the things don't cost a whole lot of money. I think the only thing on my list was wine and dark chocolate. And I like boxed wine. So it's not
She's a cheap date.
it's not an expensive thing that I need to be happy. Once you have a good feel of what you need to be happy, you can go through and cut other things out of your life.
And your top 10 is going to look drastically different from ours, or it might look a lot like ours. Now, my top 10 is drastically different from Tiffany's, but there were some similarities throughout. But when you make your top 10, with either you're doing it with yourself, you're doing it with your business partner, maybe you're doing it with your wife and kids, whoever you want to go on this journey with, it's very important that you list out your top 10, because that is going to help align your goals, whether it's joint goals, individual goals, or goals for the business per se. The top 10 is going to help define those goals. And once those goals are established, that's where you start your journey. That's where your path begins to take shape. All right, show number 1. So have you defined your why? Do you know why you're working toward what you're working toward? Do you know what you're working toward? Yeah, that's a big thing on episode number 1, defining your why. And the second thing is even equally as important is making that top 10 list. Have you sat down and made your top 10 list? Do you know what drives you? Have you encouraged your spouse or business partner or someone important in your life to do that top 10 list with you? If you need help getting started on your top 10 list, check out the show notes. I have a link in there for a PDF. Very simple little sheet, 1 through 10, they're blank. There's a little pros and questions surrounding it that might get you started on how to answer that and drive you to figure out what drives you, what makes you happy. Episode number 2, the show where we talked about how not knowing your why could ruin your life. And the big picture of this is intentionality. What are you doing with your time? Are you working towards something? Are you working towards nothing? Being very deliberate about what you're working toward and defining what you're working toward can help you to be extremely intentional. Are you tracking your time? Are you tracking your money? If you're not tracking your time, it's easy to get lost watching TV for several hours a day, or just binge listening to stuff, or binge watching stuff, or just not being productive. Now, I'm not saying you need to make sure every single minute of your day is working toward a goal or working toward your dream life. But if you have the idea of a dream life, the only way you'll get there is to be intentional. I encourage you all to, while listening to this, make yourself a commitment, or even just challenge yourself, challenge your spouse, challenge people in your life and say, hey, track the next 24 hours of your life and see what it is spent doing. I think you'll be pretty woken up to some things. Let's dig into episode 2. If you're finding yourself being unintentional with your time, it's easy to look back and say, what did I do today? Not really sure what I did. And when I was thinking about what I would say during this, I got to thinking about what was my life like before I met Tiffany. And what that was like was at tax return time, when I would get my W-9 and I'd give it to the folks at Jackson Hewitt or H&R Block, they'd put on the form, well, you made X amount of money this year. And I would just sit there and kind of chuckle at myself and say, there's no way I made that much money this year, which wasn't a lot. I was a high school teacher, but it was a lot. And I had nothing to show for it. I had no clue what I spent my money on. Sure, some of it went toward a rent or a house payment or a car payment, but I was so unintentional with what I was spending my money on. And I wasn't tracking it. So I couldn't remember what I spent my money on. And it's so incredibly applicable to our time. When you look back, the great Rent song, 525,600 minutes, how do you measure a year? And that's how many minutes are in a year. And if you tracked every single one of those minutes, how many of those minutes would you say were spent getting you closer to your why? I can tell you this, before Tiffany and I went on this journey together, I was incredibly unintentional with my time, just as I was with my money. And when I sat down and said, I've got to get more intentional about this, I've got to make sure that at least 5 minutes of my day is spent in alignment with what I want the rest of my life to be. Or else I'm going to get to the end of my life and see that nothing was in alignment and I'm not anywhere close to where I wanted to be.
I did a similar thing. I was reaching after climbing the corporate ladder without any real intention or goal in that. I was told to go to school, get a good job. I went on to grad school and did what I thought I was supposed to do. But it wasn't really what I guess I wanted out of life. I never sat down and thought, big picture, if I could have anything I wanted, what would that look like? So I was chasing goals and pursuing things that didn't really align with my why because I never thought through what my why was.
So how do you figure out what your why is? How did we figure it out?
It started with the top 10.
Right.
And thinking through what a good day and what makes us happy.
All right, so episode 2. How do you think tracking your time can help you with you on your journey? Or are you going to go back now and track your time? I hope you do. I hope you can find that there is time in your day to work toward your dream life. While you're tracking your time, what do you think it's going to reveal? Is it going to reveal some wasted time, unfocused time that could be better spent? I think if you could just lay it all out there and say, yeah, there's a block of time that I'm just unfocused. I'm just kind of piddling around. But I'm going to take 5 minutes out of that block and I'm going to go read 5 pages out of this book, or I'm going to go read a page, or I'm going to watch a YouTube video on something. I'm going to do something very intentional that is going to get me a little bit closer to my goals. I'm going to do something that is going to get me in the right direction to living my dream life. And if you're listening with your spouse or your business partner, look at each other and say, we need to be intentional. We can do this. We have time. We can make time. They always say, you make time for the things you want to make time for. And it's kind of cliche sometimes. It's like, yeah, I would go hang out with my friends, but I don't know. I'm just got something to do. But let's say it was a big, meaningful event, like a funeral or a wedding, and it came up. And funerals are pretty last minute. So oftentimes you don't have a month to plan out. But if that person meant a lot to you, you would be there because you make time for the things you want or need to make time for. So I encourage you all to think of your dream life as a huge, monumental event that you have to make time for. Episode 3. This episode, we talked about your relationship with money, examining that relationship. Tiffany and I discussed in this little segment about your life energy and how you relate what it took to make a certain amount of money and using that money to exchange for goods or services. Working per hour is not just exchanging time for money. That is what you're doing, but that's not all you're doing. You're giving a portion of your life that you'll never get back in exchange for currency. And that is what we call your life energy. Is your life energy that you'll never get back, is it worth what you're trying to purchase? Is what you're purchasing going to get you closer to your dream life? Let's dive in.
It comes down to your life energy. And Vicki Robin and Joe Dominguez talk in Your Money or Your Life about your life energy. And basically they break down how many hours are you working for that upgrade on that TV or that cup of coffee? So when you're at the register or on the way to the register, think, okay, I make $15 an hour, for example, and this thing costs $30. After you pay taxes on your $15 an hour, you're probably looking at 3 hours worth of work to buy this thing. So is it worth being at work 3 hours to buy whatever it is you're about to buy?
Well, I saw that they are now selling vinyl records at Target, and they're about $30 each.
Okay, so is that vinyl record worth 3 hours of work in this example?
Now, if you're an avid record collector, you probably are not buying new records at Target in 2021. But, if it added to your collection and that collection is what makes you happy, by all means do it. But have that conversation with yourself. Was it worth me being at work for those 3 hours to have this vinyl? You got to have that conversation with yourself each time.
Right. And it's all super personal and highly personal. It's like Eric said, if you are an avid record collector, then yes, it is worth it. Maybe that coffee is worth it for you. But I know for me, I'd rather have my donut house from Amazon cup of coffee every morning. And that's okay. It's okay to have different preferences. It's just making sure that you're spending your money in alignment with your goals and wants and needs, and not just what you think you should be spending money on.
So your relationship with money. Hopefully that little segment just got you thinking a little bit about your life's energy in exchange for products or services and what it took for you to make that money. If you go back and listen to that whole episode, we really dive into different things that we consider life energy and how to better leverage your energy for products and for services and how to essentially create money while you sleep. And that's through like rental properties and investing and things like that. But go check out that episode if you want to know a little bit more about how we approach our relationship with money. So episode 4. This was probably one of my favorite episodes to put together and talk about. And this is being cool worth being broke? And that whole episode, it's really a look into how I had to change my mindset about, are the things that I own, is it representative of the things that make me feel cool? And I had a big shift in my life about what did cool look like to me. Cool used to be having the cool things, the newest phones, the newest cars, a nice house, stuff like that. But what looks cool to me now is a lot different. We talk about repurposing old things into seeming new so that you have the feel of it's new, but it's still the old thing. You didn't have to go borrow money or pay lots of money for something new. And then we talk a lot about delayed gratification, trying to give up that old instant gratification lifestyle and embracing delayed gratification. Maybe you can get something out of this little clip. And if you want to hear more about that, is being cool worth being broke? Go check out episode number 4. Let's dive in.
I think at the end of the day, it all comes down to the motivation and why you are making the decisions and purchases that you are. Are you masking frustration and pain in your life by having these things? Is it something that you think will make you liked by other people? There's really digging into the motivation behind it. Will buying this thing really bring you joy? And is it something you really want? Does it help you achieve your why and push you on your path to achieve the bigger things in life? Or is it something that you're buying to make your path easier? So it's going to help you reach your why. But if the purchase is just to impress someone or give you that temporary satisfaction, but it's not one of your top 10 things or something that will really help you reach your goals, you should really consider, is it worth spending that money? Especially if you're going to wind up going into debt to buy it.
How I feel cool is what I think about what I'm building for my family, for our future children, our child now. That's what I feel makes me so cool. Because I think all this work that goes into delayed gratification of not having certain things now, it can be painful to not have certain things. It can make your life more difficult to not have this utility item that would make your life a little easier here and there. But that delayed gratification, it can be tough. But I feel like it makes me so cool because it opened up the ability to buy certain things that will grow over time. So is being cool worth being broke? That's a decision you're going to have to make. Hopefully you can jump back to episode 4 or even just from that clip and make a decision to accept delayed gratification and prolong you having something so you could be better prepared to have it in the future and it not affect your financial stability. On episode number 5, we talk about the rat race. And we talk about how Robert Kiyosaki defines the rat race and how to practice getting out of the rat race. And if you jump back to episode 5, you'll hear us talk about us playing Cash Flow, the game online, and playing the board game, and it just teaching very basic concepts of investing in something that will make money while you sleep so that you don't have to go to work to pay your bills. You can let the income that you earned buy an asset, and that asset is now going to pay the bills. But we do talk about the cycle of working for money, and we talk about being stuck in a job or in a career where you're climbing a ladder of sense. Either it's a corporate ladder or it's just a business ladder, and you're working toward getting at the top. And when you get to the top, are you really standing on something that you wanted to dedicate a whole life to? Did you really want to dedicate all of your working years to that? Now, Tiffany and I have a very different concept on working and working for money, and we're not career builders anymore. We really focus our time on generating passive income. Now, if your job and your career building is what makes you happy and is what your ultimate life goal is, then you should by all means chase it. But we dive into a little bit about what is our journey, what does it look like for us, and if you want to live a life where passive income is your main source of money, this episode would be for you. Let's dive in.
Yeah, with the rat race, it's easy to get caught up on trying to climb the ladder in your profession. I know in my work, I was in corporate America, and there were people that would sometimes claw their way to the top of the ladder, and you experienced some of that in the teaching world with band.
Yeah, here and there. There's a culture of a rat race in any profession, no matter what you do. If you're a teacher, the rat race is probably, did you get Teacher of the Year? Do you have a specialist degree? Do you have a doctorate degree? Those are different ladders and different rat race situations that you might find yourself in. And some of that is, I want to increase my income, because when you get a specialist degree, your income increases. When you get a doctorate, your income increases. But beyond that, it's a status symbol.
A lot of times it was, what ratings did you get? The competitions or...
Yeah, so in band, I was a band director. In the music education scene, the rat race is similar to a standard teacher, but with various added components. Think about football coaches and baseball coaches. It's the same in band. Did you win the state championship? Or did you get a division title? Did you have your players go to college on scholarship? These are different rat race things that drive you to give more and more of your time toward the profession that you're in. Are the things that we invest our time in our careers, are we doing it for the fame of being a celebrity in our niche? Are we doing it because we want to seem more important within what we're doing to give us more purpose?
So ego at the end of the day.
Are we supporting our egos? And if you're doing something meaningful in your career, that you're doing it for your ego, that's not for me to decide if it's right or wrong. That's for you to decide. But it makes me all reflect back to, what is your cheese? What are you hunting for at the end of the day? If you really love what you're doing and you're enjoying it, you should keep doing it. But what are you giving up? There's always a cost that you're paying. And the cost that I paid dearly was my time. And while it was super worth it for the kids' sake and to see them succeed and achieve, I was doing very little to support my personal endeavors. And my personal endeavors were to create income for myself, to have more time freedom, because I wanted to start a family. I wanted Tiffany and I to start a family, and I wanted to not have to work those 80 hours a week and not see my kids grow up. I didn't want to miss it. There are so many dads out there, my dad included, that gave everything they could in their careers, and you end up missing so much.
Yeah, I think it falls into some gender roles there with the man provider wanting to provide financially for his family, so he focuses on his career. But there are ways for a man or a woman, but anyone, to provide for their family through passive income and not trading their time for dollars.
All right, so episode 5, there you have it, the rat race. Are you going to spend your life trading time for dollars? Are you going to climb that ladder within your industry and get to the top and be where you want to be? I just challenge you all to just think, is that how you want to spend your life? If it does resonate that that's what you want to do with your life, then you are on the right track. But do ask yourself that question so that you can be aware and informed and understand and know that. Do go check out the Cash Flow Game. It is very beneficial. It's very fun to play. If you want to drop about $100 or so, you could buy the board game and play it with your friends and family and share with them the idea of using passive income to support your lifestyle. Episode number 6, what is your vision? On the vision statement, we came to know this through Cameron Herold's book, The Vivid Vision, and it helps you to gain clarity on your goals, your future. The Vivid Vision is a 3-year look into the future. Where is your life going to be? And that vision is going to help you to answer questions, yes or no, of requests that come to you, like daily requests. Can you come hang out tonight? Can you go with us on Saturday to a game or something like that? And you're going to be able to quickly say, oh, yes, or oh, no. You'll hear us talk a little bit about that. And that's coming from Mark Manson's book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Blank. But that's going to help you to decide how to answer those questions. And we very clearly now make decisions based off of, does it fit with our vision? And even if the request that comes to us isn't, oh, yes, we might often have to say no because of our vision. So be thinking about, what ladder are you climbing? Is it worth climbing? Does that vision that you have of your 3-year life, of the next 3 years, that is, are the things that you're doing getting you closer or further away from that? So let's dive into episode number 6. Whenever someone approaches you with an opportunity or asks you to perform a task, if your immediate gut reaction is not an, oh yeah, F yes, I want to do that, I need to do that, this is going to be good for me and my journey, then the answer is F no.
Oh no. I think we're gonna modify it from the F bomb to an oh yes or an oh no. So is it an oh yes or an oh no? The goal of the vision statement is really to be a roadmap to keep you on track. In the book, Cameron talks about having a client that was not, we'll say, a culture fit for him and his company. A client, they just didn't jive well. And he would have provided a lot of income for the business. But because Cameron had this vision, he realized that client was not a fit for where he wanted to be in 3 years. So he walked away from something that he would have normally accepted, but it was to help his business grow to where he wanted it to be in the future. And in our business, we have gone down paths of purchasing properties or making deals that really didn't fit with our vision. And most recently, we had a tract of land near our home that was a great opportunity to develop into some kind of a commercial structure or build a home. We weren't really 100% sure on the path.
Just to clarify a little bit, this tract of land is less than a quarter acre in the city of where we live. And it was just an opportunity to maybe do an investment. It wasn't for building a house for us.
Right.
It was an investment opportunity.
Yeah. So we had it almost under contract. There was some interesting stuff going on there, but after some back and forth, we talked with the city about permitting and what that would look like and zoning. And as we're trying to build this podcast and some other endeavors we're working on, we realized taking on this purchase of this land would really detract from what's defined in our vision.
And while that tract of land could have very well made us a lot of money if we did the right things with it, which we were definitely going to do.
And it would have been a fun project.
Very fun.
But it would have detracted from our big things that we wanted.
It's probably one of those rare opportunities where you have an oh yes answer, but you revert to your vision and you say, well, does this really get us closer to where we want to be?
Right.
Your vision has a veto power.
Right.
Of, while that is fun and exciting, it does not get you closer to your goals. So veto, stamp.
It helps you to say no, to very clearly define for yourself, because I know for me, it's so hard to say no to certain things, but it gives us structure and a roadmap to say, does this fit with where I want to be in 3 years?
Right. Now, the roadmap that you're talking about, that's very in line with the Pathfinder's journey, the book that we're writing, about making sure that whatever is your destination, that you have a clear and well thought out and devised plan of getting there. The vision is essentially an advocate for your roadmap. It helps you make the plan. It helps you decide whether you're going to take the long way around, the short way through. Do you want to take the scenic route? It really guides you to how you're going to get to your destination.
You want to make sure you're climbing up the right ladder. So I think about people working through a career, whether it's investing or a W-2 or whatever you're working towards, and you're climbing the ladder and you're working hard and you built up a sweat and you get to the top of the ladder to realize this isn't where you want to be.
I'm at the top of the wrong building.
Yeah, I climbed the wrong ladder. So it's making sure that you're working towards the right goals and climbing the right ladder.
So have you made a vision? Do you have a vision statement? Do you know what your next 3 years look like? Hopefully you've listened to episode 6 already. And if you haven't, go back, listen to episode 6 and get Cameron Herold's book, The Vivid Vision. And I challenge and implore you to build out a vivid vision for your life. It's going to really help you to make sure you're on track and working towards what your dream life looks like. It really helps you to clarify if the ladder you're climbing is the right ladder for you. In episode 7, we talk about dream big or live small. When we talked about dreaming big or living small, we talked about how we had to overcome a lot of mental roadblocks in dreaming big. We talk about how I put Post-it notes on the fridge of buying 2 houses in 1 year. If you go back and listen to the episode 7, you'll hear us talk about how I read a book called Rhinoceros Success by Scott Alexander. And you figuratively become a rhinoceros in your head and you charge after your goals. And I wrote down 2 goals on a sticky note and put it on the fridge, along with a sticky note that said, I'm a rhino. And it was supposed to be goals that you could not wrap your head around and didn't know how in the world you were going to do it, but it was something we were able to achieve. The other idea of big, hairy, audacious goals. Take a look and listen to episode 7 with us about how having BHAGs and shooting for the moon can get you to a place you never thought you could be. Let's dive in.
The point is to create a goal that is so big and scary that you don't think you can accomplish it. Like getting a man on the moon is another big example. That was not remotely something that was feasible at the time that Kennedy stated that was the goal. But because they had such high aspirations, they were able to achieve it.
I mean, you have the arms races going on during that era. And the Russians and Americans, they were in this competition to see who could get the furthest, the fastest. And like you said, it was just one of those, well, we're going to put a man on the moon. No one had ever done it before. No one probably knew how to do it. And without that crazy goal of we're going to put a man on the moon, they would have never set their sights on it, would have never tried to achieve it,
right?
Would have never built the technology or developed the technology that was required to do it.
Right. One of the quotes that really stands out to me is from Bill Gates, and it's most people overestimate what they can do in 1 year and underestimate what they can do in 10 years.
I think that's very true for probably everyone. This year, I'm going to buy 2 houses. That seemed like I was super overestimating. Right. When we broke down how are we going to do that into daily actionable goals, we set the bar very low.
Yeah.
On our daily or weekly or quarterly goals.
And we started not with what do we want to accomplish just this year, but we always have done 3-year trajectories. I think one good approach is to think about if you had unlimited money in your bank account and a blank calendar, what does your life look like? What does your perfect day look like? When you wake up, what do you do? How do you spend your time? And just think about an ideal Tuesday, because it's not waking up from the weekend and you got Monday, or it's not Friday. What does an ideal Tuesday look like for you? And I think that will help you form what your ideal life will look like. And this will play into the vision. We'll talk about that more next week. But what is your ideal life, an ideal day? And then
I'll tell you, my ideal Tuesday always ends with tacos.
Oh, of course.
Because Taco Tuesday is a must.
Yes.
It's part of my diet.
It's a problem.
It's a great way to stay in shape.
Yes, something like that. You want to get very detailed as you're thinking about dreaming big in your BHAG. Don't just say, I want to travel more.
So you had just mentioned that you don't want to get into the details on how you get there.
Right.
Can you break down what you mean by get very detailed?
Yeah, so you don't want to get in the details of how to do it, but you want to be very specific about what you want. So don't say, I just want to travel more.
So you think instead of saying, I want to travel more, list out the places you want to travel to?
Yeah, and how long you're going to be there. And
what are you going to do while you're there?
Right. So for us, one big thing, we want to homeschool our kids. And part of that is giving more experiential learning, because we both feel like that's really how you learn and retain information. So
Immersion, right?
Right. So I've always said, we're not going to talk about the Grand Canyon or geographic changes of the world. We're going to go to the Grand Canyon and see the different layers of the rocks.
There's so much you can do there to teach a lesson on.
Right. Wildlife. I've sat through great ranger talks in the Grand Canyon.
Survival skills.
Yeah, we're not going Bear Grylls on this, but
we could drop the kids off at the bottom of the canyon and then say, meet us at the top. You have 3 days before we send search and rescue.
Right. Here's your water. Here's your food.
No, they're going to have to make their own.
There's no water, so they'll
figure it out.
Just going to die.
No, they'll figure it out.
Oh, okay.
I've got faith in our kids.
Oh, more than you should.
I have faith in our one kid.
Right.
And future children, but
just think about if traveling is your goal in life, how do you want to travel? For us, RV is how we like to travel. It's just very family friendly and convenient. We like taking our dogs. But for you, it might be flying first class, or you might be okay flying coach, or you might want to fly on a private jet. I don't know. Think very specifically about what your dream life and dreaming big looks like for you.
Well, there it is, episode 7, Dream Big or Live Small. If you haven't already checked out Scott Alexander's Rhinoceros Success, I do encourage you to do that. It is one of those books that will leave you laughing in places, but also leave you encouraged and maybe motivated to achieve something big. Become a rhino. Join me in the pack, in the herd, in the jungles. So episode 8 is crafting a vision. There's not much I can lead you into on this episode, except for it is a step-by-step episode on how to craft a vision. And the excerpt that we're going to play is a very shortened, brief version, but there's a lot of things that do not fit in the clip. And I just highly encourage you, if you haven't thought about crafting a vision, if you haven't crafted a vision, go check out episode 8 and learn how to craft your vision and really set your dream life into the lens of focus of your future. And pretend you're traveling in a time machine to a moment 3 years ahead, dreaming where you want your company or yourself or your business to be in every single metric, from personnel to review to location to services, and working backwards from there. Most companies often do the opposite. They look where they actually are and make decisions based solely on that.
Yep. And like we talked about in episode 6 and 7, you really just want to focus on what is in the vision, not how you're going to execute on it. Dream as big as you can and just work towards not how you're going to do it, but the what of it.
Yogi Berra, I think, was quoted saying it. If you don't know where you're headed, you'll end up someplace else.
Right. So it starts with getting the right setting. You want to get out of your normal routine. And let me just clarify, all of the stuff we're talking about here comes from the Vivid Vision book. So I want to make sure we give credit to Cameron Harold. We used it as the foundation for ours. We made some tweaks on ours. We didn't follow it to a T, but
we take what Cameron has written as well as what our friend David Peters has encouraged us to do. We've taken a blended approach.
Yes. Find what works for you. If you have exactly like the Vivid Vision, crafted vision for yourself, that's great. But you don't have to follow all the rules exactly. At the end of the day, the goal is to have that roadmap for you, your life, your business, not necessarily to follow exactly what Cameron says in the book. We worked pretty independently. I sat down and crafted what I want for our business and myself, and Eric did his own independently. And then we brought them together. And the reason for that is you want to make sure it's your vision for your life. And yes, we have a life together, but what Eric wants out of life is different from what I want and need. And we wanted to make sure we both had our voices heard, and then we can merge them and accommodate as needed. But by doing it separately, I know a lot of times Eric will just agree with me because it's the path of least resistance.
Correct.
So this was forcing him to really think about what he wanted.
So I got caught up a lot on what does the vision look like? Is it just a chicken scratch sheet of paper? Are they bullet points? Everyone's vision is going to look a little bit different. If you follow the Vivid Vision book, it's probably going to be a narrative.
Right. I want to say it was like 5 pages is what he recommends.
Mm-hmm.
I think ours is about 2. You want to create it in a way that resonates with you. So the idea is you're going to write it 3 years in the future. So right now, we're recording this in February of 2022. So you're thinking February 2025. What does our life look like? What does your life look like?
A cool thing that someone we have followed pretty adamantly is Brandon Turner. One thing he would do is create a newspaper front page of his vision and say, it is February 2025. Here are the headlines.
Right.
What has happened?
Yeah. So he's got this big headline, and then he's got a narrative of what it's like to work in his company, what they've accomplished. And we'll talk a little bit more about why you should share your vision.
Yeah.
But he has accomplished more than a human being should in the amount of time that he has, because he had such clarity on his vision and worked with others in his community to get there. So building your vision, you want to take your BHAG and add as much detail as possible and get it very clear. That's why he calls it a vivid vision, is you want to take a black and white picture and make it like those really cool new TVs that are like so many pixels in it that it looks like you're looking at real life. Well, it's like even better than real life sometimes looking at them.
Yeah.
So you want it to be very colorful and rich in detail.
So episode 8, crafting a vision. Hopefully you took a little bit out of what we put in that snippet, and you have just a little bit of running room to get an idea of what a vision looks like. And if you want to know even more about vision, go back to episode number 8, take a listen to the full episode. And if you want even more, go take a look at Cameron Harold's book, Vivid Vision. So episode 9, overcoming fear. Now, fear is something that it often prevents anyone, and most everyone, from doing something they don't understand. A lot of people have a fear of spiders. Not every spider is harmful to you. Some spiders are absolutely horrible. Brown recluse, black widow, those are some bad spiders. But if you were very educated on spiders and you knew all the different types of spiders, you could differentiate and not be afraid of every single spider. You could only be afraid and avoid the ones you know are harmful to you. And so we call that clarity. When you have clarity of something you're afraid of, you can better navigate that fear and either avoid it altogether or avoid parts of it so that you don't have to become one with that fearful object or thing. So in this episode, we talk about different systems to navigate fear. And one of them is absolutely gaining clarity. We talk about educating yourself, partnering with people to tackle big deals. We do real estate investing. And so oftentimes there's a different type of deal that will come across us and we're very unfamiliar with it, but we have friends that are very familiar with it. And so we'll give them a slice of the pie. And sometimes the slice is very significant. Sometimes it's a big chunk of the pie. We would rather have some pie than no pie and just avoid it altogether. So that's a strategy that we talk about in overcoming fear. And one thing we dive into is a best worst case scenario. You'll hear about some of our best case scenarios that we played through and our worst case scenarios we played through. Let's get into episode 9, overcoming fear.
There were a lot of times it was terrifying. We'd wake up and be like, we have no money. Like, how are we going to pay for this bill coming up? It always seemed like we either had money for like a minute to pay off all the debt that we had accumulated, or we were like in dire straits once again. And it was feast or famine, pretty hardcore for 4 years.
Very tall waves and very shallow troughs.
Yes.
I mean, the ebb and flow of investing in real estate for us has been an incredibly arduous journey of feast and famine. When we had money, we had a lot of it, but it always seemed to disappear really quick when we bought the next property or something went wrong with another property.
The big approach that we've always used in our business was looking at the best case scenario and the worst case scenario. So when we were facing these fears, we sat down and said, okay, what is the worst thing that could happen? What's our plan B?
You know, we dumped half of our 401ks into our first property and we did the BRRRR strategy. And on that one, we were able to pull out most of it. We had to leave some in it. So we still had a 401k loan that we had to pay off. But if for some reason that property just fell into the ground and no one paid their rent and everything on the house broke all at once and we had no money to fix it, what would we do?
Right. Well, real quick, David Green has a great book called The BRRRR Book. I don't know what it's actually called, but yeah, fantastic book on that strategy. And with that strategy in particular, there's so much risk in the appraisal not coming back where you think it should, and repairs going over, because we know repairs go over on every single project in some level. So we could be in a situation where that refi didn't pull the cash that we needed to pay back that loan.
Right.
And then we would just have to make monthly payments. But for us, the worst case scenario was we might break even cash flow wise on the property.
We may have to end up chunking out money to that property
Right.
over a period of time until it starts performing.
Right. And that was the worst case on a particular property. For the overall portfolio and strategy and approach, our worst case scenario was that we continued working our jobs. I would go back to my corporate job. You would go back teaching or stay teaching if it was before you had left. Yeah, we would have been out probably tens of thousands of dollars, especially early on. Later on, it was probably more. But
the good thing about life is that it's self-correcting. You go back to what you were doing and you pay off the debt and you can start over.
Right.
Or we were in our late 20s. I was in my late 20s. Tiffany was 25 or so when we first started. And we said, well, if we get to be 30 years old, 32, 33 years old, and it all fails, we can start over. We're young enough that we can start over and rebuild our retirement accounts. And I never once thought, if we fail, there's no way we're doing it again.
Right.
I always had the mindset that if we fail, we're going to probably do it again.
It was worth giving it a shot because at the end of the day, worst case scenario, maybe I don't pay back the loan on my 401k and it counts as a disbursement against me, which would stink.
If you allow that fear to fill you up, it will prevent you from ever getting started. But if you take that fear and you turn it into motivation of, I'm going to educate myself so well that this won't happen to me, or I will be so well prepared to deal with it, that you overcome that. But that white noise, like I said in the past episode, you can either turn the TV off, that is not getting started, that is just letting the fear take over you, or you can adjust the antenna and clear it up and enjoy your television. Overcoming fear, it's a tough thing to do. And if you approach each situation that you encounter and you approach it with a sense of, I am either going to learn about this fear or overcome it, or I'm going to see that this is a fearful thing and I'm going to avoid it. Just like I mentioned in that blog post about it's all white noise. When you have a television that it has an unclear signal, you can either turn the TV off or you can fix the antenna and get a clear picture. Same thing with fear. We can either learn about it and be aware of what's scary and overcome that fear or avoid it altogether. Or you can just turn your back, don't learn about it, and never know if it was worth being scared about or not. In episode 10, we're going to dive into working with your spouse without killing your marriage. It's really tough to work with your spouse and you spend all day with them and have that free time within the car ride to work or just being at work in a different environment outside of being with your spouse or partner and just having that time away from them. It takes a very focused commitment to make a relationship work while your spouse is your business partner. Things we talk about in this episode are wearing different hats, traveling in different lanes, identifying the different roles that we each will embody, and living and breathing by the calendar, as well as a few other items. So here's a snippet of working with your spouse without killing your marriage. The first thing we're going to dive into are the different hats we wear as husband, wife, as business partners.
Yeah. I've heard of people physically putting on a different hat as they're changing roles. We've never done that. We try to be very clear about what role we're in at different times of the day. So, for example, our son's at school right now. So right now we have on our business hats. When we go pick him up, the parent hat comes on. When he goes to bed, the spouse hat comes on. And obviously we still have the spouse hat on the entire time, or we still have it available, I guess.
That's
but
right.
We try to define our roles based off of the situation. So we'll have conversations as business partners that are a little bit different than we would have as conversation as a spouse. At the end of the day, you have many roles within the business. Mm-hmm. And we try to designate times for those roles. So one of the big things that we have done is have really clear working hours. And we try to time block so that we're focused on a particular business or particular role at different times of the day.
What makes it work is that we put it on the calendar.
Yes.
We make sure that whatever's on the calendar for that day is the way the day needs to go. Now, of course, things may come up and have to adjust fire, but for the most part, we try to really stick to the calendar.
I think it also creates a lot of freedom. So you're able to schedule events with friends, whether for both of us or just yourself, because our calendar is our life. So what's going on, I know what's going on at any given time.
Right.
And we're able to schedule dinners or lunches or whatever we need to do without having to wait to consult each other. It just takes a lot of the time out of back and forth.
Having that clear set time where you're working.
Right.
Having clear hours of when you are accomplishing your tasks, whether they're family tasks, husband tasks, wife tasks,
right,
business tasks. It's very clear and laid out where your time is being spent, how much time is being spent there. And talking about these setting working hours, while you're working in those different tasks, what you're really doing is you're traveling down your lane.
I think another key thing is having a big differentiation between our business roles and our spouse roles.
So if your business roles are not clearly defined and you're having these battles with your business partner or spouse, it creates tension.
Key to that is taking time for yourself.
Yeah.
And date nights. I think those two things go hand in hand.
And that's something that we have been a little more intentional about recently, is doing that self-care and having time for ourselves.
I think in addition to that is also the self-care for the marriage and the relationship through date nights.
So how does Tiffany work with me without our marriage being murdered?
Right.
Essentially. So we have designated hats that we wear. We travel in designated lanes. My sombrero has many little hats, and I drive a different little car with each one of those little hats.
That's hilarious.
We set very intentional working hours versus family versus personal hours. We make sure we have a date night, whether that's a stay-at-home date night or that's a going out date night, but we make sure that we are intentional about spending time together as a couple, not just a mom and dad, not just a business partner, but we're intentional about our date nights. We're intentional about taking time for ourselves, making sure you have time for self-care. We run our business like a business, getting to know yourself a little bit better through the Enneagram or whatever personality tool identifier that you want to use. And then being open to this relationship being strengthened by all of these things and being willing to put in the hard work. Letting that coal being pressurized into something beautiful like a diamond. Well, there it is, episode 10, working with your spouse without killing your marriage. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of insight into different strategies to help foster a positive relationship with your spouse or business partner by clearly identifying who's doing what, who's responsible for what, letting each other have their own job, and respecting each other in the process. I encourage you to go and decide if you want to identify with your spouse or business partner. What kind of hats do y'all wear? What lanes do you travel down? What are your roles? And do you have a working calendar that you live and breathe by so that you can both know what's going on with the business and in your personal lives? One thing that really helped Tiffany and I get a grip on our relationship and our business was taking that space. We needed space, not just away from the business, but we needed space for ourselves. And if you're not taking space away from your business partner or spouse, just completely detaching for a day, maybe it's half a day, just time for you to be you and for you to focus on you, because you can't give anything out of your cup and pour it into someone else's cup if your cup is empty. You have to self-care. You have to take care of the things that you need for you to be 100%. Jumping into episode 11 was our final episode of this season, and that was getting your spouse on board. And we dive through different topics of maybe your spouse is supportive but not involved, and all the way into your spouse is against it. And in this episode, we talk about different ways to help share in the success and help share in the journey with your spouse. One of the overarching themes of this episode is respect, clarity, and providing safety and security. Let's dive in. Experiencing success for yourself is great, but sharing that success with your significant other or spouse makes it that much sweeter. Lonely is the man on top of the mountain when he has his riches and success by himself. But you put that man or woman on top of that mountain of success with their family or loved ones around them, and there you have a fulfilled person. So in bringing your spouse to your projects, including them on different ventures that you're doing, you get to share that success with them. Other ways to get your spouse a little more on board is scratch their back, and maybe they'll scratch yours.
Yeah. So I know Brandon Turner from Bigger Pockets talks a lot about how he got Heather on board. And he says he asked her to read Rich Dad Poor Dad in exchange for reading the Twilight books.
I think it's offering yourself and your time and your mental energy. If you can give that to your spouse, that's a huge sign of respect and a huge sign of, I want to be in this with you.
Yeah, it's making a sacrifice because you're asking your spouse to sacrifice something. So it's the give and take that goes in a relationship.
Yeah. And one of the last things I want to talk about is create an easy understanding of what you're doing, because everything real estate investing wise is not easy to understand. And you might understand all of them because you surround yourself with real estate investors that talk this language and you can communicate it very well. But if you go home and you're speaking to your spouse and you're talking about utilizing options and
ARV and Reno budgets and
you're talking in a language that they don't speak. So find a way to communicate in their language.
Yeah, I know when we first started going to our local meetup, we would always call each other after the meeting and just try to digest, because there was so much vernacular that we didn't know. So many things that were just above our heads, and we were deciphering through it together. But if you have already gone through that phase and your spouse hasn't, you want to make sure that you're putting things on their level and speaking to them on where they're at. I mean, you wouldn't talk to your fifth grader like you would a college student. So treat your spouse with the respect to show them, I understand you're here at this different level than where I am right now. Let me carry you up to meet me where I'm at.
So let's change gears here. Let's now talk about your spouse. They are against it. They don't want you doing it, and you want to get them turned around. You may not want to get them on board with you. You may not need them to be in your business, but maybe you just want them to gain a little understanding about what you're doing and how it's benefiting, and you just want a support person. Or maybe you want someone in your business with you, and you want that person to be your spouse. People feel most supportive of their spouse in any situation when they feel they are safe and secure. If you're going on a venture that is risky and your spouse sees it as risk, and all they can see is the potential loss, the potential change in their life that is negative, and they don't see the benefit, they are likely going to be against it.
Right. So if you tell your spouse you need $20,000 to purchase a home and you're going to put the renovation on credit cards with 0% interest, in essence, what we did starting out, and your spouse is not okay with that, they're just going to see, oh my gosh, we're going to have this credit card debt with a 25% interest rate and we're going to lose $20,000. They're not going to see that you could potentially make a few $100s a month in cash flow. And by only seeing that negative side, they're not going to be on board. You're progressing towards your goal of achieving financial independence.
Yeah, so clarity brings about security.
Yeah.
Right. So how do you provide clarity to help make your spouse feel safe and secure?
And show them how it works.
That's right. You show them how it's going to happen, step by step, if they need that. Effective communication is tough, especially when you're communicating in a different language. You're not speaking to them in a way that they understand. Right. So communicating effectively is important, but communicating consistently is even more important.
It all comes down to respect at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And try to put yourself in your spouse's shoes and really understanding where they're coming from and their fears and hesitations, and putting yourself where you were when you first started.
Right. By getting the communication down, by being able to foster to their needs, I think you're going to see that your spouse is going to be more willing to get on board. Well, there it is, y'all. Season 1 of the On Purpose Investor podcast. I tell you, Tiffany and I have had a wonderful time planning out these episodes, diving into each episode and trying to expand on the things that have worked for us and sharing some things that haven't worked for us. And we have just really enjoyed being on this journey with you. For those of you that have left reviews or have left ratings for us, we're very thankful. We are always very thrilled to hear people that had their lives changed by something we've said, or just gotten that little bit of extra motivation to go do something. We really look forward to providing you another season coming up. We're already in the works on planning those episodes out. I think moving into the future, you could see us dive into a little more deep dive, if you will, onto some projects that we've done, some structuring of deals that we've done, and getting into the weeds a little bit more about how we built our portfolio and just maybe even answering some questions that you guys may have. So everyone out there, if you have something that you would like for us to talk about or you want to know a little bit more about, please feel free to reach out to us. You can write a review and say it in your review that you want to hear about this, or you can send us an email. You can email us at tiffany@onpurposeinvestor.com. You can follow us on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, send us a message through there. But we really want to know what you want to hear, and we want to know how we can make this podcast even better to serve you and to help you grow. I want to give a shout out to everyone that has helped us to produce these podcasts. We use a platform called Castos, and Castos has been awesome at helping us get our podcast kicked off and off the ground and produced. So big thanks to those guys over there. Also a big thank you to everyone that has given us feedback along the way. So I appreciate y'all. And then shout out to those that just encourage us. That's our friends, our family, and our mentors, and just people we work alongside. Stay tuned for season 2 and more updates coming out about the On Purpose Investor brand, our podcast, and our journey. Can't wait to see you back here on the On Purpose Investor podcast. Are you ready to discover and build your dream life? Then it's time to become a Pathfinder. Head over to onpurposeinvestor.com and sign up for our newsletter to get tips and tricks to help you find your path and get the latest from our blog. If you haven't already, we'd really appreciate an honest review on your favorite podcast app. If you're enjoying this show, share it with friends, family, and fellow investors. See you next time at the On Purpose Investor Podcast.